What's the weirdest first date you ever had? Showed up for internet-based date. She shows up with a dude. Expected me to pay for them both to eat and drink for the evening. WTF? Date was ending. Got in my car after saying bye. Looked over and he had his wiener out and was stroking it. I went on a date with a guy the first had met online. He wanted to meet for drinks. So I went to the pub and waited. He showed up 20 minutes late on his bicycle. Proceeded to come into the bar and down 2 pints after giving me a point and a wink. I overheard him tell the waitress to put it on his tab, and then he came over to the table with another beer. He proceeded to tell me about his 2 boys. No mention of them in our previous conversation. And how his mom wanted to take them all to Disney World. He told her that would be too expensive. So he left his boys at home and he and his mom went to Disney World instead. Then he proceeded to tell me that he rode his bike everywhere because after his 6th DUI, those dumbass cops took his license away. He mocked me for drinking water. Then in his next breath told me that he could really see falling in love with me. In 20 minutes, I got about 10 words out. And most of them were me telling him I had to go. I later found out that he worked for a friend's father. And that he was married. A childhood friend of mine asked me to go to dinner after we ran into each other at a party. I thought this would be great as she had gotten pretty cute since last time I'd seen her and it was. All was going well when we were texting. I met her at the restaurant and to my surprise there was a middle-aged business-looking guy there as well. As soon I sat down both of them tried to recruit me to one of those pyramid marketing schemes. After I declined and went home I would get texts regularly over the next month asking me what went wrong and why I didn't want to make all this easy money. I'm pretty sure I didn't even get to order dinner as well. I went to the cinema with a school friend. At this point I didn't even know it was meant to be a date. Afterwards he asked if I wanted to play some games at his place. So I said yes. As soon as I walked into his front room I was met with about 8 of his family members. He had invited over most of his family to meet me. They all believed I was his girlfriend. And that we had just come back from a date together. I felt very uncomfortable. And couldn't bring myself to tell them that we weren't actually boyfriend-girlfriend. Met a guy at the skate park when I was 14. He asked if I'd go out with him the next day. I thought he was gorgeous. And when he said I should dress up I expected something special. He took me to his little sister's funeral. He cheated at bar trivia. Used Purell on the silverware. And got into an altercation with a homeless man on the way out of the bar. Went out with a dude who was a few years younger than me. At the time, I was late 20s and he was early 20s. So I didn't think much of it. We went to dinner first after dinner. He wasn't ready for the date to be over yet. So we went driving around. I was driving. But I got the feeling he was steering me someplace specific. Hey, let's go left here. I don't know what's down this way. Didn't get a creepy vibe from him at all. And I was the one driving anyway. So I just went with it. Eventually we ended up near a shopping mall. Hey, let's go in. Just for fun. I haven't been to the mall in ages. Sure. Why not? This is where this began to be the weirdest date of my life. For the next 90 minutes or so, he kept acting like he was walking aimlessly. But then would make a beeline for specific stores. Each time I noticed this, he would just happen to have a friend working in that store right now. Isn't that so weird that we'd run into my friend here? After the 3rd time it happened, I really began to feel like I was going on a tour to be introduced to all his friends in an effort to prove that he knew a girl. Finally, we left the mall, and he suggested we stop for ice cream to end the evening. There was a Cold Stone Creamery nearby and I suggested it. No. He wanted to head back toward the restaurant where he'd left his car. Okay. Reasonable enough. If you guessed that he wanted to go to a Dairy Queen where two of his buddies worked, you are way better at predicting things than I was. Got a call from a friend of a friend who I thought I'd met once before, asking if I wanted to go out tomorrow. Saturday night. Sure. Went out to her place about 40 minutes away. Realized upon arrival that I didn't actually know her name. Had dinner. Talked. Made out a bit. Talked about going out again. Made out some more. Called it a night at around 1 a.m. Tried several ways to get her to reveal her name. To no avail. Dropped her off at her place. Drove home. Went to bed. Realized the following morning that she had never spoken my name either. Not on the phone or in person. Further realized that I didn't have her phone number. Called mutual friend to ask for her number. Mutual friend had no idea who I was talking about. Gave him address of girl. Said he didn't know anyone from that town and the address wasn't familiar. Never heard from her again. Went to a Japanese steakhouse. Date heckled the chef and threw pieces of food at the next table. She pissed off the chef so much he doused her plate and set it on fire. Then walked away. Plate was completely engulfed in flames. Weirdest date ever. Couldn't wait to get away from her. He was a lab partner in college. He asked me out. We met for dinner. He locked eyes with me over his salad and told me he thought I was as beautiful as Hitler's niece. I could not look less like her. But okay. He was a little intense and a good deal larger and stronger than I. So I texted a girlfriend to meet me at the bar across the street so I'd have an excuse to run after. Our date ended. He then described to me how he thought I'd be exquisite while pregnant, and how he'd searched so long for a woman so compatible with his genes and heritage. Rolling his sleeve to expose a swastika tattoo. It was then I excused myself to the ladies and noped out the kitchen into the waiting arms of my best friend. I had to change my number. He was so insistent. 30-minute dinner at the Macaroni Grill. Then went to PetSmart and followed her around the horse feed section. Total date time 45 minutes. The first time I dated someone from Tinder. The date turned out to be a recruiting event for one of those Costa Coffee pyramid scams apparently. The guy was missing his quota so he used Tinder as a recruiting tool. Unfortunately for him, I realized quickly what it was and left ASAP. Fuck that guy. We are walking around and a guy asks us if we want drinks that he is holding. I say no. We keep walking and he is clearly following us. We change roads. Side of road and walk off into the darkness. Went to a pier. Started making out and she sits on my lap grinding me for over an hour. She tells me she heard a noise behind us. We see nothing. Keep making out. No one was there. It was a dark, quiet pier. We make out for a while and I close my eyes. After who knows how long I open them and a guy 40 to 50 years old. Big build wearing a leather jacket with one hand in the pocket asks if he can join in and tries to kiss my date. I push him away and tell him I'm calling the police. He tries to grab her but she slaps him and I stand in the way. He is in our path to leave. My phone has zero battery and I know that. He still has his right hand in his pocket. Which to me means strong possibility of a knife. I wasn't about to die for this and contemplated if I could push him hard enough for him to fall off the pier and make a run for it. But it wasn't a sure thing and I was terrified. I take out my 0% battery phone and pretend to dial. And put it to my ear. He starts running away and we stay back. My date starts crying. I hug her and we walk away. Edit. I was roughly 15 years old at the time. Overweight. And couldn't even do a push-up or pull-up. So yay, I was gonna die if things got physical. A year after I graduated high school. I got friendly with one of the best-looking girls who went high school with me since she kept stopping by my work. I was always on good terms with her. But she was one of the top ones that every guy knew of, and most of us just dreamt of what it would be like to date her. I got the courage to ask her to grab coffee one night. I went to pick her up from her house and she invited me while she grabbed something. It was near Christmas time, so I was looking around at the house that was in full holiday mode. She asked if I liked the decorations and I casually said, yeah. Only thing that's missing is a mistletoe. Quote. Which I only now as I type this out realize was way more suave than I ever realized. Self-reminiscing 5. Her immediate response to this was, oh. Do you want a kiss? And then kissed me right on the lips. Then asked, ready to go? Like it's no big deal. Hell yes. We went to a local coffee shop and the conversation was already starting to get weird. But what the fuck do I care? We grab our coffee and the conversation starts to get weirder. She goes, what if none of this is real? What if nothing we did ever mattered? Okay. I'm in college and taking a philosophy 101. I can hang with this, I think to myself. You know this night is going to end eventually, right? I could die right now and it wouldn't matter. Or kill those people over there, confused face. I make small talk like, well, the people we matter to most will remember us, so it matters blah blah blah. I can't even remember what came out of my mouth. Because I was afraid something might set her off. We walk back to the car. Phone rings. And it's my friend. Thank God. He tells me he's in Hollywood with another one of our friends and I should come out. We start driving and she tells me stories about random guys she's been dating and one of them who she hated. So she slept with him purposely while she was on her period and bled all over his sheets. But also hasn't been tested for STDs in a while. But isn't worried about it. She starts screaming out the window at random cars while we're on the freeway going 75 miles per hour. Everyone speeds in LA. Don't judge. I'm gripping the steering wheel trying to remain focused and figure out WTF is going on. My friend calls me while I'm driving asking where I am, and as I'm holding the phone with my right hand she notices my biceps and goes, whoa. Look at those guns. Want to see my guns? Proceeds to lift her dress up to flash me. Not pulls her dress down. Lifts it up from her knees. So she's half naked in my car. And I'm staring in shock. While also trying not to crash. I tell my buddy I'll be there soon and hang up. If you've lost count. I've now just made out and seen this fantasy girl nearly naked. We get to Hollywood and park. And she randomly yells at this truck that drives by. Telling them to fuck off. I ask her WTF she did that for and she says, they were talking shit. Quote. No. No one said anything. Keep walking and she's looking behind her at nothing. Since we weren't 21 yet. We met up with my friends and went to this 18 plus. Except she doesn't have anything with her. Bouncer says he won't let her in without ID. She flips and yells, do these tits not look 18? And proceed to flash him and half the Hollywood strip. I'll never forget the look on my friends' faces, nor will I forget what the bouncer said. Go home. Apologize to your mother and your father for being so embarrassing. And don't ever come back. This story keeps going. But I know Redditors aren't ones for long ones. So I'll conclude by saying I spoke to her sister a few months later and she informed me her sister was diagnosed with schizophrenia and been put on various medication. Like lithium. Which she hasn't been taking. TL. Doctor. Went out with one of the best looking girls from high school. Made out with her and saw her naked. Only to learn she was schizophrenic and had a terrifying, fascinating night out at it. Took out place of employment. Date lied about her age. Turns out she didn't have her license. and her parents ended up driving her there and stayed for the meal. Ended up meeting the parents on the first date with my date. I got a free meal out of it, so it wasn't all bad. Have been talking to a guy. He invites me over midday to watch a movie. I say fine. Head to his place. I knock and wait at the door to apartment for like 5 minutes. Check text message to make sure I have the right place. He invites me in and tells me he needs to finish something on the computer. He proceeded to ignore me for like another 30 minutes while playing League of Legends on the computer. It was so awkward. Bonus weird points: he shared a bedroom with his sister in a small apartment. I understand I was a broke college student, but this guy had a job as a charge nurse at a local hospital. He was very socially awkward. Definitely weirdest first date. Went with a junior friend of mine to a Lindsey Stirling concert. Prior to the concert, she came over to my house earlier than I expect, so it was just me and her and my little bro in the house. This was the first time I had a girl over without my parents home. Actually, it was the first time I had a girl over ever. Like the player I was, I ended up calling my mom 10 minutes before she came over because I was at a loss for what to do. To this day they still joke about me calling my mom asking what for her advice on what to do with a girl mostly alone. I met a girl on MySpace. Fingerbanged her behind a tower on the Salt and Pepper Bridge. Then we went to her house where she has her 40+ ferrets. It smelled horrible. Edit. Forgot to mention we got McDonald's before we went to her house. Took a girl to the Museum of Death. It was actually my favorite date I've ever been on. Took a really pretty girl out on a date. She was 18. I was 22. I'm pretty well known in my small town, so she knew me as a friend of a friend. When I picked her up, the plan was to go to dinner, then back to her brother's place, who was out of town at the time. When I picked her up, she barely spoke to me. I take her to dinner. She orders the most expensive thing on the menu. We go to her brother's. I initiate making out for all of 5 minutes, and she uncomfortably asks me to take her home. Never spoke to me again. Now, why was this weird? My friend, knowing I wasn't prepared to take a hot girl out, gave me Adderall to take beforehand. I'd never taken it, but he assured me it would make me feel more confident. I popped 3 of the immediate release pills with a Red Bull 20 minutes before I picked her up. I didn't know why she never called me, but our mutual friend basically said the date went like this. In her words, he picked me up and did not let me get a word in at all. He then takes me to an expensive restaurant and doesn't order anything but water, which makes me think he is broke but trying to impress me. Not true. Just wasn't hungry at all. We then go to my brother's house. He picks a horror movie which I had already told him I didn't like. And before the previews are over, he was kissing me with a mouth drier than desert sand. TL. Doctor took a bunch of Adderall, not realizing the extent to which I would speed my balls off on my first date with hot girl. Came off as a cheapo creepo. Never heard from her again. Okay. I hope I'm not too late. Throwaway account. An NBSP. So earlier this year I was getting pretty tired of being single, so I signed up for Plenty of Fish. Filled out most of my profile and put some recent pictures of me there, so people could see what I look like. A few days go by with a few conversations, but nothing meaningful. Eventually, after about a week, I get a message from a young woman we will call K. She asked me what I did and we got to talking. She said she was wrapping up her master's degree and was tired of dealing with immature and stupid guys, and said it was refreshing to talk to someone who was actually mature. An NBSP. I wish I would have ended the conversation at this red flag, but I didn't. And the story continues. Asterisk and NBSP. After a few days of good conversation, she gave me her number and we planned to meet up for a drink. Kay suggested a bar close to both of our homes and I agreed. There was just one catch. However, she asked if I could come to her house and pick her up before heading to the bar. Against my better judgment, I agreed. An NBSP. The day comes and I do a little searching on Google Maps to see the type of area it is. It wasn't really a bad area, but I was still suspicious that this was some sort of setup. So I told her I would text when I was getting close. What I actually did was arrive about 20 minutes prior to our meeting time to scope it out. Yes, this is a little paranoid, but I hadn't been late in months and was willing to risk it. I sit there in the parking lot near her apartment for about 10 minutes looking around for anything sketchy. Nothing happened, so I texted her and said I was on the way. After a few more minutes of nobody showing up or acting weird, I decided to pull up to her apartment and go to the door. An NBSP. I wish I could tell you I had gotten mugged and that was the end of my night. But it wasn't. So the story continues. Asterisk and NBSP. I knock on the door and she opens it after about 2 minutes and Kay is looking fine. Short dark hair. She was wearing one of those, fuck me, dresses. So I think I'm gonna be good to go. We hop in the car and start driving toward the bar. And I decide to ask her why I needed to pick her up. An NBSP. Kay. Well, I can't really drive right now. Me. Why's that? Quote. Suspecting the answer. Kay. Because I just got arrested for my 3rd DUI. Me. Oh. I see. An NBSP. So anyways, we get to the bar and I'm starting to suspect this girl isn't what she seemed at first. But I keep trooping. As soon as we get to the bar she orders a beer and a double shot of tequila. She asked if I wanted one. But I said no for now. After a while, and a few more beers, the conversation derails into her telling racist jokes and laughing loudly in the bar. It was at this point I was ready to go. An NBSP. I wish I could tell you that I paid my bill, drove her home, and went to bed. But I didn't. And the story continues. Asterisk and NBSP. To be clear, I am a bit of an idiot. An NBSP. After a few more beers we step outside so she can bum a cigarette from someone and the conversation derails into how the president is killing this country and this is what happens when we have people like him running the country. She also casually mentions that the owner of the bar next door is a friend. How does she know the owner of the bar next door? Her brother dated the owner. At this point I just nodded and smiled and wondered what else would happen. Later she suggested we go to that bar. And I was tempted to say no. An NBSP. I wish I had said no and driven home. I didn't. And the date from hell continues. Asterisk and NBSP. We get to the next bar and it's the most divey bar I've ever been to. It's the sort of place where guys on the wrong side of 60 spend their afternoon and evening propping up the bar, ordering watered-down beer. After a few more beers we begin talking about her brother and family life. As it turns out, she had a bit of a history. So this brother dated the owner of the bar, even though he was about 20 years younger than the owner. That's whatever. And I keep listening. Then, as it turns out, the brother had gotten abusive with the owner of the bar and gotten kicked out for a year. But now was back on good terms with said owner. However, then she began talking about herself and her history of mental illness and depression. An NBSP. At this point I am thinking I can't walk out on her. She's drunk and can't drive home. And at this rate I just need to drop her off. An NBSP. After a long rambling story about stays at the psychiatric ward over the past few years and another round of shots for her, I was about ready to go. But she had one final thing to tell me. An NBSP. I wish that I would have gotten up and left. But I didn't and, well, you get the idea. Asterisk and NBSP. So the entire time we're at the second bar. She keeps looking nervously at the door. Then she turns to me and says all of her problems were because her brother raped her. The same one that had dated the owner of the bar. The same one, as it turns out, who was planning to meet us at the bar without my knowledge. So eventually this skeezy-looking guy walks in. Pencil-thin beard. Wearing a shirt that was far too large. Greased hair. Cargo shorts. The works. He comes and sits down with us, introducing himself and blowing smoke from a Newport into my face. An NBSP. They almost immediately get into an argument. And I excuse myself and walk over to the restroom where I relieve myself and wonder what the hell is actually going on. At this point I was just ready to go. But I kept telling myself I needed to at least drop her off and not leave her at the bar piss drunk. When I come back to the table, they've made up and she is now sitting in his lap. An NBSP. As it turns out, she told me that the incidents with her brother lasted quite a few years. And a therapist told them to try to work it out instead of cutting off all contact. She said she didn't sleep with her brother any longer. And that the last time they did it was over a year ago. To make a really long story a bit shorter, I asked her about a half hour later if she wanted to go. She said no. She was going to leave with her brother and stay with him. They walked out hand in hand. But not before she stuck her tongue down my throat. An NBSP. I drove home in disbelief, wondering if this had really happened or if it was just two people messing with me for fun. Went on a date to a sushi bar with this guy. Pretty cute. Met online. He ordered ramen for us both because it was the best side to sushi, I guess. I am not a chopstick master. I tried using them and kept dropping noodles and making a mess. So I asked for a fork from the waiter. Date starts screaming asterisk, "You do not use a fork. It is disrespectful. You are supposed to use chopsticks. If you can't, then don't eat it." The waiter stared at him. Then looked at me, "It's okay if you need a fork." I had tears in my eyes and just mumbled, "No thanks. I'll be going." Handed him some cash and left. Had another where the guy invited me over to watch movies. Was moving furniture. So I just stood awkwardly since I was a guest and petite lady. So once we sat down to watch the movie, he smelled to high hell. Proceeded to take his shirt off and say, "Just wanna show ya what you're working with." It was awkward. But I liked the movie we were watching, so I stayed. Afterward we were talking and he started laughing at something and I noticed his teeth had yellow, brown, black stains. I'm shallow. Good teeth are a plus for me. We ended the date and that was that. I swear to baby Jesus. This is a true story. Met on a dating website and texted non-stop for quite some time. He is a funeral director. I came to his house for dinner and a movie. I pull up to him standing in his garage with a suit on, holding a roll of duct tape. I honestly thought about driving away. He told me that he just got called out and I can either go with him to get the body or wait at his house. Number 2 please. He gives me a quick tour of the house and neglects to mention where the light switches are located. I was in the living room of a split-level house and I needed to use the restroom. I go upstairs in the dark, feeling everywhere for a damn switch. Never found one. I go to head back downstairs and the heel of my damn shoe gets caught on the second stair. I heard a snap as intense pain ensues. On my way to falling flat on my ass, I take out a stupid plant he had on the half wall. So now on this first date, I am laying in his foyer, sobbing, with the worst sprained ankle ever, surrounded by dirt from the plant. All I kept thinking was that he was going to come home any minute and find this crazy lady laying there. It took about 15 minutes for the pain to subside and allow me to crawl downstairs to get my phone. When he got home, I told him what happened. Not sure he truly believed how much pain I was in until I had to have an MRI the following day. We have been together ever since and will be married in a month or so. Weirdest date I've been on went really well. I went on a double date with a friend of mine. He was dating a girl and set me up with her roommate. We went to a comedy show. Steve Byrne. What Mr. Byrne likes to do at the end of the show is get audience members on stage to be a part of his boy band. Now back then I was absurdly baby-faced. So when he saw me he laughed and said, "Oh God. You. Come here." So I wind up on stage with a few other guys and we get our boy band names. He decides mine should be The Sexecutioner. Then he gets an older woman on stage and each of the boy band members have to give her a lap dance. I've always had a flair for the dramatic, so when it's my turn I really grind hard on this lady. All of that went great. Steve Byrne got me laid. I told this one before. But when I was in high school I went out on a date with this girl I had a big crush on. We went to the zoo and then grabbed some food as a diner. Afterwards, we had to split up in order to get our trains that were going in the opposite direction. I awkwardly tried to lean in for a kiss, while she went in to hug me. And I ended up headbutting her in the face and her nose started bleeding. I was embarrassed as fuck. So I just asked, "Are you okay?" And when she said, "I think so," I just waved goodbye and walked away into the train station facepalming really hard. Online dating. Met this somewhat younger woman for the first time at an Irish pub. Albeit a somewhat fancy one. We were seated at this table that was sort of in a little space with another table for two, with dark wooden dividers that sort of walled off the two tables. There was a guy by himself at the other table, slowly getting wasted while watching a football game on the TV. My date was a little younger than me. Actually, a lot younger. I was 41 and she was 28. She was blonde, had fairly large breasts, and was wearing a short little black dress and bright red fuck me shoes. As the date progressed, she started fishing for compliments. It got worse and worse. Asking me how I liked her dress. Is it too slutty or not slutty enough? Did I notice she wasn't wearing a bra? Did I like her hair? Etc. One of the advantages of being a more mature male is that I'm able to see batshit crazy before I stick my dick into it. The minute we finished dinner, she brought up our next date. I told her that she was very pretty and really nice, but that we were in two different places in our lives. She gets mad, then starts crying, then jumps up and runs to the bathroom. This being Canada, and it being winter, she left her coat at the table, along with her purse. I didn't want to leave it there, especially since the other dude sitting in our little alcove was still there. Although he was pretty wrecked at this point. After maybe 20 minutes, I'd paid the bill but there was still no sign of my date. I figured she may have left her coat and purse there intentionally. So I'd have to call her or meet her to give them back. Not wanting to play that game, I decided to wait her out. About 20 minutes later, I had to take a piss. I went to the bathroom and came back. Her stuff was still there. I started to look around for the waitress so I could tell her that my friend had left her stuff here accidentally and that she'd probably be back for her things later that evening or tomorrow. When I saw something that made me laugh out loud. I saw two bright red high-heeled shoes sticking out from under the drunk guy's table. I looked at him, and he was sitting there with his head back and rocking slightly back and forth. Obviously getting a blowjob. I literally laughed out loud. And there was a thud from under the table and my date crawls out with this look of horror on her face. She looks at me and says, "I thought it was you. I thought it was you." Drunk guy looks scared. I'm not a small man. And I'm in pretty good shape. And he starts saying, "I didn't know she was your girlfriend, man." I just said, "Misty." Meet drunk guy. Drunk guy. Meet Misty. I hope you two have a wonderful life together. The waitress came rushing over and said, "Is there a problem here?" I said, "No problem at all." Gave her $20 and told her to bring my two friends here a round of drinks and keep the change. I wasn't mad or upset in the least about her sucking that dude's dick in the pub. I had zero interest in her. It was, however, the strangest date I've ever been on. I cried. I met some guy from Reddit at a bar to watch a basketball game, where I was sure that my alma mater was advancing to the big dance. They were so strongly favored. And they fucking lost. You have to understand that not much goes on in my hometown. And college sports has long been my thing. When I moved away. When I visit home. When I have beers. When I'm lonely. When I was single. When I was social. Watching this team has been one my constants in life in. For better and lots of worse. I root for them always. Anyway. They lost. I cried. I felt it well up as the clock dwindled down. When it was imminent. I just lost it. Tears down my face and I started muttering like a monkey. I mean really. Who cries over basketball? Luckily. He found me charming and zesty. Not crazy and obsessive. Because we got married a year and some change later. I usually still cry when they face elimination. I was 22 at the time. And I went out with this 32-year-old attorney. She's cool. She's pretty. But the date was strange. We're talking over dinner. And I notice she has a big scar on her arm. Managed to find a polite way to ask about it. Turns out she'd been hit by a car while crossing a street and broke the living shit out of her arm. Anyway, we leave the restaurant after dinner and stop at a coffee shop. A question I always like asking people is, what's your greatest fear? Because you can learn a lot about people that way. So I ask. She gets real quiet and contemplative. Like, she's really thinking about this one. I'm convinced I'm gonna get a really deep and meaningful answer. She finally looks up and says, "I think I'd have to say bears." Walking back to our cars. I could not get her response out of my head. Bears. Since I couldn't get that out of my head. I definitely wasn't thinking about the earlier conversation in the restaurant. And I decide that we should quickly cross the street just as the light changed from green walking man to red flashing hand, and we almost get hit by a car. I see the PTSD flash before her eyes. And in that moment, I became acutely aware that I had never fucked up a date so badly in my life. There was no second date.